Hi, and welcome to today's series where we're going to be focusing on wrist strength, flexibility, and support and mobility. There are a couple of things that you may want to bring along with you. I have two soft sort of textured balls which are mimicking, say, maybe a rolled up t-shirt or a rolled up pair of socks. So go and grab those. And then the other thing we're going to have access to is weights. Now, this is going to be highly dependent on whether you can or can't do certain exercises. So don't worry if you don't have the weights. You can always bring them in a second part or when you do this on repeat. So the first thing we're going to play with is how our wrists are able to move or not move. So beginning in a 4-point kneeling position, let's have the hands resting under the shoulder line and the knees under the pelvis. Because this is a wrist focusing motion, already start to notice where you are taking weight through your wrist structures. Ideally, we want to be weight bearing onto the base of the bones here, the carpal bones. And our movement is just going to start with a leaning away so that you're sort of decreasing the angle at the wrist joint, and then coming forward and see if you can go a little bit further so that you're increasing the angle. Now, of course, this is going to be very dependent on, what's going on in your body. In my videos, I'm really trying to talk to people that have got fairly good movement already, but might be slightly challenged. If you know you've got certain conditions that this would be aggravating for, obviously please be mindful of not pushing yourself to those end range limits. We'll go one more time as we travel towards the front and just getting the feeling of how that is in your wrist. We're going to do a similar movement now towards the side. So as we're going, we're shifting our weight from one side to the other. Let's do our best to keep our weight centered over our hips as we just go to the left and the right. So this is quite nice just to get the different sensations of, wow, there's a lot of movement available in my wrist that I may not have known about. And then we're just going to take that into a circle. So combining all the motions going around. So we'll do 3 circles going in this direction and 3 in the other. So when you get to the end, pause and then go in the opposite way. Now, whenever we do things one way and then the other, you'll probably notice that you'll feel more comfortable going in one direction. All right, we're going to make a figure 8 motion. So feeling like you're traveling between your hands to make that sort of infinity loop come through the center. And one more time around each wrist line. And then, of course, I'm going to ask you to go in the opposite direction through your loop. So again, you'll be deceived at how sort of much brain challenge is involved, as well as different weight-bearing parts of your wrist bones. And then back to the center and coming down. Now, I know that may have felt a little bit, different for you. So just taking your hands, give them a little squeeze together and then pushing them away from you so that you can open up into that wrist area again. Let's take the hands and bring them this way. So what we're doing is we're creating a flex in the wrist and then we're creating a stretch in the wrist. So flexing means pulling your hands this way. Extending means pushing your hands in the opposite direction. So we're going to go and find those little ball positions or those rolled up socks if you want. Please know that you can also be on a chair for this. You don't have to be sitting on the floor, but of course find where you're comfortable. So what we're going to begin with is the arms just lightly out in front of us. You can even have the elbows at your waist to start with. We're going to be rolling the wrists backward toward you and then lowering them down toward the floor. So you're going to be working on stretching the under part of your forearm as we do this motion, and then as the wrists go down, you'll be stretching here at the front part of your forearm. So at the moment, this is not a very challenging stretch, but it's going to start to get a little more so. So we'll keep with this motion, but now we're going to extend the arms out a little longer. So reaching them in front so you get full range of the movement. And again, you're going to notice that pretty quickly that range is going to change, or that feeling is going to change inside of the wrist joint area. One more time like that. And then returning the arms back in. We're going to turn the palms to face each other. The action is exactly the same as we roll the wrists in toward the body and then rolling the wrists away. So as we've changed the angle of the arm and the elbow, that's affected the wrist. So now you may notice that you've got more range to come inward, which is the flexion, and a little bit less range to take it outward, which is that extension line. And when I do this movement, I think of good old pinball machines and the flippers that would have to go, allowing the ball to come in or pushing the ball out. All right, and let's do that same motion with the arms out in front, long line through the arms as you open at the wrist and as you close. So when we have a longer arm structure, what's going to happen is more tension in your muscles is starting to occur. So you've got less available range of movement because your muscles are already being used for the outstretch of the arm. We'll go for 2 more of the rolling of the arms in and out. And then from there, we'll bring it all the way back in towards you. Same setup, starting low, and we're going to do some circling of the wrist bones. So on the floor, we did some circling, but where our wrist was fixed in space, now we have more access, change direction, to get more available range of movement in a familiar way. This is what our hands know. They live in this open position most of the time. Again, arms are going to go out and you're going to make your wrist circles here. So listen to how your wrists are behaving one over the other. Change direction. Maybe you hear it clicking. Maybe you notice there's a little bit easier motion happening in one than the other. And one last time, and then bringing it all the way back in again. We'll set those down for the moment. And what you're going to do is lace your fingers together. And then again, we're going to stretch those arms all the way away from you and then bringing them back in. And again, stretching the arms out and bringing them in. So while we do this, it's just a little reliever between our sets of movement. So from here, what we're going to do is take the backs of the palms and face each other. This one is a little tricky, so just do what you can. We're going to take one hand over and then lace your fingers together. You can see already my one shoulder wants to lift, so make sure that your shoulder stays low and down. You're going to bend your arms, thread your wrists through. Now maybe this is where you have to stop, but if you can, try and stretch all the way out and in front of you, and then return and lengthen the arms forward. We'll do another 2 like that as we bring it through and stretch the arms out in front and then lace out and have the relief. One more time as we bring it through and holding it out there. So you're going to feel all sorts of weirdness in those wrists. And don't worry, you're not going to snap anything. We're very resilient. Undo the hands and then take the other side over. Lace the fingers again, set the shoulders. Now remember, if having arms high is too much, lower the arms down. You'll still get good benefit as you thread the arms through. Now, personally, for me, this way is a lot easier. I'm a right-handed person, so whenever I have my right hand, which is the one I did first, it does all sorts of weird things. This side's so much easier for me. Maybe you're noticing similar things in your own body. And then resting out. We don't have to do the flexing of the wrists. We did that already. Let's do a nice big shake. All right, so from here, we're going to grab the weights if that's what you want. If the weights are not ready for you, then please do me a favor and just repeat the series with the softer thing. You could also do this without anything holding and just do the action at the wrists. So we're going to do a very similar motion to what we did earlier. So we're going to start with those forearms facing down, knuckles facing forward. We're going to roll the wrists back. I like to think of this like a motorbike motion. So we're going to be doing pulling the throttle on or the accelerator on as you roll the wrist backward and then releasing. And you're just going to go into that range as far forward as you can. So we're just doing 5 in a row. We're going to keep the elbows in at the waist. We're not going to do them with long arms at the moment. Turn your palms to face in and roll them in and roll them out. And I'll tell you why, because we're about to do a movement where we're going to be balancing our arms onto a surface, which is going to add even more to this motion. All right, last one, and open out and then resting down. So you may need to reposition yourself somewhere where you have access to a level surface. It could be the table or the kitchen counter line. And what you're going to do is you're going to set your arms up. Again, if it's too intense with the weights, take the weights away. So you've got your wrist should be at the edge of the surface. So it's hanging off the edge so that you can get as much range to go toward the floor in that position and then bringing it up this way. So noticing that as you bend your wrist toward you, there will be a slight difference. So there's a sort of angling inward to each other. Don't try and change that to parallel. It's not meant to do that. The bones are spiraling underneath you. So just letting that angle happen as you do the movement. Again, you're going to feel a great stretch coming down through the fronts of the wrist line, and of course when you pull towards you through the top side of your wrist and forearm area. Last one like that, and then we're going to switch our hand position. Holding on to weights like this is fantastic also for your grip strength. So same action, we roll the wrist down, really feeling the lengthening of your muscle fibers on the front of the arm, and then pulling up. This is the strengthening component. So you will feel almost like, wow, that is intense. I'm only using 1 kilogram weights here. If you were using something else, you might be thinking, what the heck's going on here? So again, it doesn't matter about the weight that we're using. It's about the action that's available at that wrist line. And then we're going to do our final one, rolling back and forward, and then we're going to rotate those arms in. This is the same sequence we've done the whole series, turning the wrist bones in and turning them out. So while I'm in this position of weight bearing over the front of the box, I still am very conscious of how my body is being supported. So I'm not collapsed between my shoulders. I still have very good function of keeping my shoulders on the back of my rib cage and working through my wrist line. I've forgotten how many I've done. One last one we'll say, and then bringing it all the way back in. Rest the weights down, whether you had them or you didn't. We're going to then circle those wrists again, just getting a nice mobility through all those little bones. They're like tiny little tumbling stones, and they make perfect connections with each other as we do this series. All right, have a nice flick through the fingers. We'll remove your surface, so coming back to where it feels the best again. And what we're going to play with now is same action, but a little bit more intense. So again, please just do what you need to do. We'll start with a single side. We'll progress to the double, but if you're not ready for double, don't go there. So beginning to have our hands facing forward, what you're going to do is take your palm and rotate it so it faces down to, or the palm faces up towards the ceiling. To start with, your elbow is going to be slightly bent, and then you're going to go into lengthening into the arm as best you can, making sure your shoulder doesn't creep up in that action, and then bend the elbow out to the side again. So as you're doing this, this is a super stretch down the muscles of the forearm. So anyone who's ever suffered from tennis elbow, this is a great stretch for that condition, because the muscles at the front of the arm are the ones that are really not happy, creating that tennis elbow effect. And then release that hand out. We're going to do the same on the other side, so flipping that palm, and again allow the little softness in the bend, and then straightening through. So again, you're looking for what is available to get the full back of your hand on the floor, but without causing disruption to other parts of your body. So if you're not ready for the double, then remember, you're going to stay with doing another round on the single side each. But if you're ready for doubles, we flip both fingers over. Now we want to go all the way to that wrist position. Start with elbows bent, and then see what you have access to. Maybe you can't get a fully straightened arm like you did on the first version, or maybe you're super mobile and you can get that action. So we've got another 3 to go as we reach up and then bend arms out, and 2, and then last one, and then resting from there. All right, have a tiny little break. We're still here on our knees. We've got one more to do. So we're going to flip our hands in the opposite direction. So your fingers are going to face back towards your feet. And then from this angle, like we did in our very first exercise, we're going to be moving away from our wrist creases and really exposing the stretch down this forearm side. And then bringing yourself forward. Let's lean further forward. Just find out where your weight will still be supported. Don't try and go and crash to the floor. And then again, leaning away. So again, this is another area you want to make sure your thumb is present on the floor. And as you're stretching back, you're not wanting to creep the shoulder up. Trust me, the body is so intelligent. It's going to do all the things necessary to get out of any resistance or discomfort. And again, just leaning back. Remember your form through your body. This is all about our arms and our wrists. By now they should even be feeling, I want to say energized, I want to say open, I want to say feeling like they've been worked. You will feel the right word coming to you as you do this motion. All right, and then we're going to rest out from that. All right, flick the wrists. We've got one more to go, and that's to work on this hinge line of your fingers. So we're going to work again in one hand at a time. So I'm going to start with one hand underneath. If you want to, you keep the other hand next to it, but I'm going to take that hand and put it behind my back. So from this angle, I'm going to be pressing up onto the joint of my fingers, and then I'm going to lower my heel of hand down. And again, I'm going to be pressing up. I'm keeping my whole arm straight as I do that, and then bringing it down. So again, rising up into the hinge, really feeling your fingers nice and separate. If you have your fingers too close, you won't give yourself the range of movement that you're after. In case you haven't noticed, there's also a forward motion happening as I'm coming up onto those fingers, and then a backward motion as I release. This is one more to go as we bring our body up, weight bearing all the way through those 4-finger knuckles, and then returning down. Let's change to the other side. So always being prepared to know that two sides can feel very different. So when you're ready, how can you come up onto that motion with the most amount of ease in your body? And again, weight bearing through the finger line, keeping the elbows straight, making sure your shoulder doesn't creep up. So allowing that weight distribution to come forward and over. This is the same thing we can do with our feet when we go up into heels off the ground, balancing on toes. So the structure of our feet and our hands, very, very similar. And then we'll go for one more time as we bring our weight forward, strong through our wrists, and then resting all the way down. All right, so from here, we're just going to bring ourselves back into a nice, easy place. We're going to shake those wrists out. We're going to give them each a little bit of love. Take your fingers and slide over the nail base, very stimulating for the nerves, lots of nerves in your nail beds, and very energizing for your system. Once you've given your fingers a little bit of a flick, then you are ready to continue on with your day. I hope you feel amazing through your wrists, and that if you do this regularly, that any pain or discomfort in them starts to dissipate. Have a wonderful day.